وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه أما بعد. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, ثُمَّ قَسَتْ قُلُوبُكُم مِّن بَعْدِ ذَلِكَ. Afterwards, your hearts became hard. فَهِيَ كَالْحِجَارَةِ أَوْ أَشَدُّ قَسْوَةً. They became harder than even rocks, even harder than rocks. And Allah says in the Quran, فَبِمَا نَقْضِهِمْ مِيثَاقَهُمْ لَعَنَّاهُمْ وَجَعَلْنَا قُلُوبَهُمْ قَاسِيَةً. Because they broke the covenant, we cursed them and we made their hearts hard. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابَ مِنْ قَبْلُ فَطَالَ عَلَيْهِمُ الْأَمَلُ فَقَسَتْ قُلُوبُهُم. Don't be like the people of the book, that when the time became very long for them, they forgot what was in the book and their hearts became hard. So the Quran mentions the concept of hardening of the hearts. And what exactly is the hardening of the heart? The hardening of the heart is a spiritual disease that causes the heart to lose impact when it hears the Quran recited, to not care when it is reminded to fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to become callous, lackadaisical, lazy, to not really care at all about the akhirah. And unfortunately, this is a spiritual disease whose cure is difficult. Many other diseases, they are symptoms, or we should say they are the result of a hard heart. So the root of all spiritual diseases is a hard heart. And this is demonstrated by the fact that one group of people, Allah says, we cursed them and we made their hearts hard. We seek Allah's refuge. But the curse of Allah then brings about a hardness of the heart. So we have to be very careful that we need to monitor our hearts, and our hearts should not be going down this road of becoming hard. Why does the heart become hard? Many reasons. Number one, breaking the covenant of Allah, which means committing sins. فَبِمَا نَقْضِهِمْ مِيثَاقَهُمْ. Because they broke the law of Allah, they broke the covenant of Allah, they kept on committing sins. So the first reason of the qaswatul qalb, the first reason of the heart becoming hard, is our constant sinning, such that sins become embedded in our lifestyle, such that we don't care when we even commit a sin. This is the number one reason for our hearts becoming hard. So the more habitual and frequent sins are, then the harder our heart will become. Number two, فَوَيْلٌ لِلْقَاسِيَةِ قُلُوبُهُمْ مِنْ ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ. Woe to those whose hearts have become hard, so much so they don't remember Allah. So the second reason why our hearts become hard is because we don't remember Allah. We don't do dhikr. We talk lots and lots without remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We, as one hadith in Tirmidhi says, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, وَإِيَّاكُمْ وَكَثْرَةُ الضَّحِكِ فَإِنَّ كَثْرَةَ الضَّحِكِ تُمِيتُ الْقُلُوبِ. I caution you from always laughing, because laughing too much makes the heart go dead. In other words, if we rephrase in simple English, it is entertainment, merriment, just wasting our time with nothing productive. This will make the heart hard. And our scholars mention, Al-Ghazali in his Ihya Ulum al-Din and Ibn Rajab in his Rasail, they mention that of the causes of the hardness of the heart is that we simply overindulge in that which is allowed. So talking is allowed, overindulgence. Good food is allowed, overindulgence. Laughing is allowed, overindulgence. So to overindulge in the physical senses, it makes the heart go hard. And therefore, especially in this month of Ramadan, when inshallah all of our hearts, they taste a little bit of softness, and we appreciate the softness, we have to be monitoring, extra vigilant that we don't go down this path. Minimize wasting our time. Entertainment is indeed something that makes the heart go hard. A little bit of entertainment is good. It's necessary. You have to laugh to be human. But kathratul dhahik, always entertaining, always lavish food, always every pleasure, we're just going after it. Everything in moderation. When you go to excessiveness, the heart becomes hard. How do we solve this problem? Obviously, number one, obey Allah. If breaking the commandments makes the heart hard, obeying the commandments make the heart soft. Number two, kathratu dhikrillah, always doing dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, always remembering Allah. Never ever have a long conversation without interspersing it with dhikr. Never go for hours and hours without remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not even hours. Our Prophet would not sit for an hour except that he would remember Allah more than 100 times. Number three, a man came to the Prophet and he said, Ya Rasulullah, I complained to you of a hard heart. What should I do? So the Prophet ﷺ said, go find an orphan and wipe his head, and go find somebody who's hungry and give him food. In other words, one of the ways to make our hearts soft is to be involved in our lives with those who don't have as much as we do. There's hardly anything that will soften our heart than to physically visit somebody who is very sick, somebody who is socially deprived, an orphan who doesn't have, a proper place to live. When you see the lifestyles of those that are less fortunate, when you interact with them, and that's why the hadith says, go find an orphan and wamsah ra'sahu, wipe the head of the orphan. I want you to think about that. Unfortunately, and you've heard me complain about this so many times, we live in such a modern world that we don't even interact with the people we give charity to. All of our fundraisers, we get that check, we pull out our credit card, we throw the cash to somebody who's just as wealthy as us, then they go and they take it somewhere else. We're removed even from interacting with the impoverished. And that is a sad state of affairs. I encourage all of you to actually find a family, and there are plenty even here in Memphis and back home. If you have relatives, go, and when you go back, connect with poor people, then you sponsor them, take care of them. And that's why sponsoring an orphan that you correspond with, and there are groups that do this, helping poor people that you know, is very different than simply writing a check and sending it off into the mail. And I'm not discouraging you from doing that. I'm encouraging you to go to a higher level. Number 4, frequently thinking about death and the akhirah and visiting the graves. Our Prophet ﷺ said, أَكْثِرُ مِنْ ذِكْرِ هَادِمِ اللَّذَّاتِ. Frequently think about that which will destroy all pleasures. And we are commanded to think about death, not so that we become morose, not so that we become just always thinking about death for the purpose of being panicked and sad. No, the mu'min, when he or she thinks of death, makes life more productive. That's the purpose of thinking of death. Thinking of death is not a morbid thing that you're always thinking of negative. No, when you know you're going to die, you realize time is short. Life is short. I can't just waste it watching 10 hours of TV, just playing this game, doing this and that. Life has to have meaning. I'm going to go, you're going to go. When I go, I had better have left a good legacy. So when you think of death, and you visit the sick, and you visit the graveyards, and you realize, subhanAllah, where are all those generations before? My own ancestors, all of them are gone. When you comprehend this reality, your life becomes more productive. So in these days of Ramadan, when all of us, inshallah, our hearts have softened just a little bit, let us try our best to maintain that softness when Ramadan finishes. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us to the best of all manners and the best of all deeds. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prevent us from having hard hearts. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us with pure hearts that are always soft and will always remember and reflect upon the book of Allah. Inshallah, we'll continue tomorrow. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi.